Hi Leo. Sorry I couldn't be there today in person for today's exciting debate, but technically I died in 1975, so I'll try and make the most of it. I'm going to talk mostly about one of my most famous works, The Origins of Totalitarianism, which I published in 1951, 6 years after the end of World War II. In this book I focus on anti-Semitism and racism in general, and imperialism as the key historical precursors to the German and Russian totalitarian regimes. However, it's important to note that, as somebody who believes in the power of human agency and political action to determine our own fate, I strongly do not believe in historical causality. That would imply that the tragic events that took place had a degree of predictability, which borders on inevitability. Instead, I attempt to take an objective look at historical events, and find that anti-Semitism and imperialism contain the subterranean streams of modern history in which the origins of these elements may be found. Ideally, I would have liked to rename my work The Originality of Totalitarianism, as I do not seek or claim to find any sort of concrete basis from which these types of regimes emerge from. Rather, I believe that there was nothing in the 19th century, or indeed nothing in human history, that led to or could prepare us for the frightful barbarity of the 20th century. In essence, the totalitarian regimes that emerged were a colossal rupture from all that had come before. In this book I provide a historical account of the elements that crystallized into totalitarianism. I hope that makes some sense. So, looking at anti-Semitism, as a Jew myself, who was arrested and detained by the Gestapo on 2 separate occasions, I have a very poignant personal experience of the brutality and arbitrariness of the Nazi regime. However, I think it's wrong to believe that there was some sort of latent anti-Semitism unique to the German people. Yes, Germany had the first overtly anti-Semitic political party, but if you look back at Europe as a whole during that time, most historians would argue that France was in fact probably the most anti-Semitic nation, which is shown by the Dreyfus affair, which essentially polarized the entire country from about 1890 to 1900. Instead, I believe that anti-Semitism was used as a convenient means to achieve political ends. It is much easier to shift attention away from domestic failings by creating a common enemy than it is to take responsibility for the failings themselves. As Jews were blamed for sinister activities like secretly seeking world domination or hoarding economic resources, so too were the former ruling classes and kulaks persecuted in Russia for supposedly subverting the state and plotting against the national interests. In reality, the vast majority of the people that were targeted were just harmless citizens without political opinions, who are liquidated not on the basis of their views or deeds, but simply because of their group membership. Similarly, many of the people that were involved in carrying out the actual horrors of the Holocaust are perhaps not the endemically evil, unreconcilable, Jew-hating individuals that we would like to believe they are. You have to take the situation into context, where the propaganda and everyone around you makes you believe that you are contributing towards a better, greater society, merely signing off pieces of paper for X numbers of enemies of the state to be liquidated or detained becomes a trivial administrative task. In fact, I believe I was the one who coined the term the banality of evil when describing the trial of Eichmann in Jerusalem after World War II. The role that imperialism played is equally subtle and complex. On the one side you have the period of Enlightenment, with its focus on equality and natural rights, but at the same time the atrocities and barbaric subjugation of people in the colonies was taking place. There are some who argue that racism is as old as mankind itself, quoting Greek scriptures of citizens versus the less developed barbarians and outsiders. However, I believe that imperialist expansion necessitated the invention of racism, as it is the only possible explanation and excuse for the atrocities committed by Europeans against fellow humans. By differentiating people into subhuman categories like savages, the instigators and implementers of imperialism were able to rationalize the actions that would otherwise be too horrific to contemplate. This systematic method of bypassing norms and normal morality can be directly traced to the dehumanization of Jews by the Nazi regime and the eventual massacres that occurred during the Holocaust. It is also important to note that rapid and radical social change that was happening to societies going through intense industrialization at the time had alienating and atomizing effects on the population. This is a well-documented and researched phenomenon presented by William Kornhauser in his mass society theory. He describes how individuals lose their sense of identity and belonging, often becoming disillusioned and dissatisfied with the political regime. In light of such social instability, it is all the more crucial to rally people around a flag or unite them in a common cause. In summary, I believe that the forces of nationalism, supplemented by anti-Semitism, became the precious cement that bound together Europeans, who had been divided by the advent of the industrial age. Combined with the factors that I talked about earlier, I believe that these are the most prominent in explaining fascist mass support. Thank you.